All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. I always like to try to be as timely as possible because I know it's Monday night and you guys got things to do. So I want to jump right in. This training I'm actually really excited about. So most of you kind of know I've been fascinated, very much interested in nutrition fitness for a long, long time. Most of that has been just personal and for my own, I don't know. I just love learning about all that stuff. And just also in terms of like body composition, that's always fascinated me. Working out in terms of like just pushing my body to its limits. That's something I really, really enjoy. So anyways, spent a lot of time learning, researching, just burying my head in like books and podcasts, tried lots of different things, and where I found success with things here and there. I don't know. I just always felt like there was something missing. And just couldn't quite put my finger on like what exactly was just not there, right, in this space. And so when I came across this idea of like nutritional periodization, it's just like mind blown. Like it was like, this is it. This is the piece that's missing that we don't talk about. It's kind of the linchpin, right, that I feel like really pulls this whole thing together. Yes, there's a lot of like great information out there, but putting it all together, making it actually make sense, I think comes down to placing it within this kind of context, right, of periodization. So let me go ahead and share my screen. As always, I love putting together presentations. I'm super visual and it's just helpful for me. So hopefully it's helpful for you guys too. So let's jump in. Nutritional periodization. Let's explain what that means. So we're kind of aware of that idea in terms of like high level athletes, right? And you might think of this or know of it more like seasons, right? We know athletes go through seasons. There's no way that a high level athlete is going to be able to perform at 100% all year long. That's just insane. We just naturally know that that's not possible, right? And so we know athletes go through a periodization through their year in order for their season to be as effective as possible, right? And so they usually go through 4 seasons, right? There's in season where they're actually playing or participating in their sport, right? At that moment, all that's important is that they perform at the highest level, right? And then immediately after their season is over, they go into what we call like a post season, right? And the main goal there is really to just recover, right? Because we know how taxing whatever the sport is, especially at a high level, right? There has to be this period of recovery, right? Lots of times injuries are happening, and especially as the season goes on, right? There's going to be more and more injury towards the end. There's a reason for that. So they go through this postseason where they recover, and then they go through an off season, which is not the same as a postseason. An off season means now we've recovered and now we can work on things that will help us in the actual season later on, right? So a lot of times it's a skill acquisition or strength acquisition as well, right? Because we know stronger is going to help us perform better and just, honing in the skills needed, right? And so they go through a season of actually working on those things. That is in the off season. And then they go through a preseason. And this is just a ramping up for season. And usually this is both a physical and a mental preparation to go back into season, right? And so really what's happening is they're going through this cycle throughout the year. And this enables them to have this period of time where they can perform at this really intense level, right? And so we can do that and use that same type of approach with dietary protocols. In fact, this is what's missing, is that we don't ever periodize our nutrition. And so there's no way that we can perform, or in this case, get body composition goals that we want, because we never go through these seasons to actually prepare for that, right? So what we do know is that the pursuit of any dietary goal, and this could be deficit, so losing weight, and it could be gaining weight. Gaining muscle, right? comes at a really high cost. It's not easy for the body to do either of those things. It's a change, and the body does not like change very much, especially if we don't prepare the body to do that beforehand, right? And so there's a great phrase that I learned, and that's that every dose of stress requires a dose of recovery. Okay. And so you cannot just stress without recovery. You know, if you're in any kind of physical endeavorment, like, you have to recover, otherwise you cannot pursue anything higher, right? And so this is really what's missing, I feel like, in the nutrition space, is that we don't allow and don't emphasize the fact that there has to be recovery, right? So personally, I feel like this comes down to these three things, right? We will use periodization, one, to get better results, because we're going to recover you and we're going to set you up for an actual effective fat loss, right? If any of you have ever gone through multiple fat loss phases, you know it gets harder and harder, and your results are less and less, right? It's less and less effective, right? And that's just because you're not going through the full process. Second, and this is kind of what drives a lot of what I do, is just helping people get off of this roller coaster of like, get on a diet, lose weight, regain all the weight, and then go on a diet, lose weight, and then regain all the weight, right? It's a horrible cycle to be stuck in. And so this is why I'm like passionate about what I do, is helping people kind of ditch that and figure out how to do this in this last piece, a sustainable way, right? So being able to create success that's long-term, not just 6 weeks and then like you enjoy your new body, let's say for, a couple months, and then, you end up regaining the weight and then even more. That's typically what we see happening, right? And then if we can make this an enjoyable process, I mean, that in itself, I think, is just a huge win there. I mean, I got one of the best compliments in one of my client check-ins not too long ago, about a week ago, where my client just said, like, this is the most enjoyable way I've ever lost weight. I mean, I just was like, man, if you could have seen the smile on my face, like, yes, like, we're doing this right. And we're making sure that we are being effective at what we do. So anyways, all of that really is predicated on this idea. Your body is made to adapt. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually what we want, right? But because the body adapts, then we have to be conscious of that and then use that as we move through this whole process, right? Now there's a lot of adaptations that happen as you go through the process of either dieting or muscle gain, right? In this case, I'm going to talk specifically about weight loss. Number one, your BMR is going to reduce. That's just the amount of calories that you burn. And this is just at rest, really. So that makes sense, right? As we lose weight, well, smaller bodies are going to require less energy, number one, and you're underfeeding yourself purposely, right? And so the body is going to make this adaptation to then not burn as many calories as a survival mechanism, right? Two, your metabolism is going to slow down. While that is frustrating, we know what happens. It's going to happen again because of survival, right? The body is going to say, well, if we're not going to get enough nutrients, enough energy, then we can't allow this to go on indefinitely, right? The body doesn't understand that we have like short-term goals and that this isn't going to happen forever. It's just going to extrapolate. I guess we're just going to be underfed forever. So let's just slow things down, right? And as we go through that process, then we know hormones start to downregulate as well. So this is where, your thyroid function is going to lower during, let's say, a fat loss phase. Immune function is going to be less than stellar at this point, right? All these things are happening on purpose, right? Now, if you stay there too long, then these types of adaptations become problematic, right? Especially if you are under eating for long periods of time. Well, then we're going to start seeing much more severe adaptations that can cause, lots of issues. Now, like I said, this is not a bad thing. This is actually how we're actually surviving, right? This is how, as a species, we are so robust because the body has this ability to adapt, right? It's going to adapt to what we do. So with that, what we have here is now 5 phases. Now I made them 5, and you'll see the last one that I kind of put in there. But we can kind of go through just like an athlete to kind of set ourselves up for an effective season, and then an effective off season as well. So I actually created this not too long ago to kind of put in visual form basically what I do. And so for, if you're one of my clients, some of you have seen this, some of you have not. I really wanted just a way to kind of visualize, you know, what the work is that we're doing together, right? So 5 phases. I put very kind of loose timelines. It's really hard to know exactly how long people will need in each of these phases, but these are typical timelines that we'll see. And as we get into the process, obviously we will know better, you know, how long it will actually take. All right, so let's kind of break these down kind of quickly here. Okay, so number 1, we have to always kind of start with just an awareness, like, where are we? What is our starting point, right? And this generally doesn't take too long because we just need to take an assessment of a few things, right? So number 1, I think the very first training I did, we talked a little bit about the calorie gap. And there's 2 ways that calorie gap can happen, right? We can be under eating and then outperforming that under eating, meaning we're putting out a lot of energy, but we are not taking in a ton of nutrients, right? And so in that case, we're under eating. Okay, that's a calorie gap. When you're in a deficit, you're in a calorie gap, right? The other side of that is overeating and then under exercising. That is also a stress on the body and difficult for the body to deal with. So the gap can go in either direction. So number 1, we want to decide, or we want to not decide, we want to assess what calorie gap exists and how severe is that gap, right? 2, we're going to look at biofeedback. What is the body actually saying? So, you know, I have my clients track this on a regular basis. This is sleep, stress, hunger, mood, energy, cravings. These are all ways that the body's always talking to you. And we talked a little bit about this in that first training as well, that these are not just random symptoms. These are, you know, actual, I don't want to say consequences, but they are the result of what we are doing, right? The lifestyle, the inputs, the things that we specifically are doing. Lifestyle, you have to assess like your current lifestyle. Are you even in a position where you could put yourself through, let's say, a fat loss phase, right? And that's looking at as a whole. Do you have the capacity to do that? Are you mentally prepared? Are you physically prepared? Do you have the capability to actually set up your lifestyle to take that stress on, because it is a stress? And then last, we're going to look at dieting history. You know, I've got clients that come to me with decades of dieting history, and then some who have dabbled here and there with diets, right? Those are 2 very different scenarios that will have different protocols based on that, right? So we're going to look at the length of dieting history. So how long have you been dieting? And then the degree. So how severe were those diets? You know, I've had clients who come, you know, they've done like maybe 12, 13, maybe a 1,500 calorie deficit diets. And then I have some who've come like maybe from a physique background who came eating like 800 calories. Those are very different, right? And the recovery is different from that. So take a couple weeks, assess, where are we even starting, right? From there, we can then move to what I feel like is one of the most important phases, and that's restoring that metabolism and then optimizing lifestyle. Notice this is a 1 to 4+ month process, right? And again, that's going to go back to those factors that we just assessed. Specifically, dieting history determines a lot of this. If we've been dieting for a long time, then recovery is going to take longer, right? If we have not, then it can take a little bit less of that time, right? Now, what are we restoring? Well, if we've been in a calorie gap for an extended amount of time, the metabolism has probably made some adaptations, and we want to bring that back to a more effective function, right? So this is why multiple attempts at dieting become more and more difficult because we're not restoring a metabolism back to its function. This is like continually thinking that you could be a high level athlete and be in season all the time and take maybe a week off or a month off and think that you're going to go back and perform at a high level. No, you're not, right? The body needs time to actually come back to what we call homeostasis, right? And then we're going to optimize lifestyle. So what I'm focusing on, what you should focus on in this time frame, this 1 to 4+ months, is one, biofeedback. You're going to see that quite a bit. We always want to be in tune with the body. Food quality and quantity. Remember, we are trying to lessen that gap. That's my goal in phase 2, right? Is that we get that calorie gap basically to a minimum, right? That we are eating an appropriate amount in order for us to support activity, whatever that is. So activity and stress, by the way. And so we're going to look at, the quality of food coming in as well as quantity. 3, a huge one here, should probably bolded this one, is consistency, because part of the problem is that we've probably been really inconsistent prior. And so the body is kind of getting mixed signals all the time. It's really hard for the body then to anticipate what it needs to do to allow for survival to continue, right? And so consistency then becomes this key to helping the body relax, repair, restore, and get back to that homeostasis that it really wants to be at, because that's where you and your body's going to function at its best. And then last, we're going to focus on awareness. This is an awareness of what works for you. So what foods work well, what foods don't work well. What type of eating pattern is beneficial, in terms of macros, do we need more carbohydrate? Do we need more protein, right? What are the things that we need to leverage for you, your lifestyle, your stress, your activity? All that's super important. So maybe you can see why this process takes an extended amount of time, right? And the goal is basically we are setting ourselves up for that fat loss phase. We're setting ourselves up to go in season, if we want to go back to that analogy, and perform at our best, right? Nobody wants to go into a diet phase and struggle. That's kind of the worst, right? Put in all that effort to not get the results that you want, right? And so this phase is why I love focusing on it and making it kind of the center of the work that I do with people. And I think it's the part that a lot of times we kind of just bypass, right? Everybody just wants to go straight to fat loss, right? I don't want to lose weight. Great. I totally understand. I get it. However, have we earned the right to do that, right? Have we set ourselves up for that to even happen? Or are we just going to continue on that cycle, right? And that's the frustrating part. And that's where my passion comes from, is helping people alleviate that frustration and understand, what's really happening, and then setting them up for, a fat loss phase that will still be challenging in that, of course, we're going to be in, let's say, a deficit, but we've set ourselves up to actually do that in a more effective way. So phase 3, we actually execute that diet phase. So this is an exciting place to be, because it means you've done a lot of hard work, and it means you've set yourself up, and we should see results. Right now, nothing's going to be linear. Nothing is very predictable, but we can be assured that if we put in the work, we have the foundation, that the diet phase then should be less difficult and less painful. Now, this is pretty hard and fast, 2 to 4 months. That's the longest I'll keep somebody there, because we already know what happens. We know what's going to happen in a deficit. The body's going to start adapting, right? You're going to be underfed. That is the purpose, right? We want the body to go ahead, release, unwanted body fat, right? It's going to run off of that. It can only do that for so long. So while we are in this phase, we want to look at these 3 things. 1, a relative versus an absolute deficit. So relative just means that we are not getting too extreme. For most people, that looks like 5, maybe 750 calorie deficit. And that's about it, right? We don't want extremes. Extremes generally lead to weight regain, right? Because it's not sustainable. An absolute deficit, definitely these are my, physique competitors who are going into like a 1,000 plus deficit, right? These are people coming in eating, let's say 800 calories in order to get at that level, right? That's an absolute deficit. I don't recommend. And if you're there, don't stay there too long. We're going to read biofeedback. There it is again, right? I tell all my clients who are in deficits, we're going to read it and we're going to watch. Like, I can't tell you exactly when our endpoint will be. We're going to watch biofeedback to let the body tell us, right? As soon as things really start going south, it's time to leave, right? We cannot just stay there, right? I know sometimes we might mentally want to push like, oh, but I'm so close, but you got to be careful that you're not pushing your body over the edge, right? To the point where adaptations then become much, much harder to then reverse, right? And then we're going to use like diet breaks, refeeds, maintenance days in order to kind of extend that time in terms of helping the body feel safe and not feel so deprived, right? And mentally, a lot of times this stuff just helps keep on track. Let's just say we went the full length for 4 months. It's a long time to be in a deficit. And so having, let's say, a break or a refeed or maintenance days and knowing how to use those is going to help just mentally get through that, have something to look forward to. And then, of course, we're going to have events, right? Life just doesn't stop when you're dieting. And so this is a way to allow for life to continue to happen, but yet still go ahead and reach our goals. All right. Now, here's the other piece that I feel like is just kind of missing, right? Like this idea of phases isn't talked about enough, but then the idea that we need to recover, right? Just like an athlete needs a postseason and they need a dedicated time where all they're doing is focusing on recovering from that intense work that they did, right? Now, this doesn't have to be a long drawn out process. 1 to 2 months is typically, a good amount of time where we can then reverse you out of that deficit, right? What we don't want to do is be like, okay, 4 months is done. I'm just going to go back to what I was doing previously. So that's number one. Don't want to do that. And two, we want to methodically get ourselves back to what is our new maintenance or our new normal with our new body composition, right? So really what's happening is we're returning to phases 1 and 2, right? Because we already know that fat loss phase did move us away from homeostasis. It moved us away from where we were. That's the point. And so we need to kind of get ourselves back. Now that homeostasis is going to be slightly different just because we have lost weight through this process. So when I created that image, it was important that it was a circle and that they just kind of went right back into each other, right? Because it's not a linear process. It's not like, here I am, I want to lose 20 pounds and now I'm here and I'm over, right? And it's ending. Not at all. This is a circular system that builds on itself. So what that leads then to is then here where I think that most people need to spend a majority of their time. That's just living at maintenance, living at this place where you're not in a calorie gap, where you're properly fueling yourself and your mindset, your goals, your focus is not weight. It's not food all the time, right? We can go back and start enjoying life and utilizing all the skills that we learned through that whole process, right? So indefinitely, we can be here now until you'd like to re-enter that cycle. And that's just because you may not lose all the weight or get the body composition you want through one cycle, right? Remember, we're using biofeedback to tell us, okay, we're done. The body is not responding anymore. We exit, we recover, and we're now at this maintenance time. And so you may have to go back, and that's okay. It's meant to be this cycle that we can go through, right? Think of, again, an athlete, right? Going through that cycle and getting better and better and better each season, of course, right? Because they're giving time to recover and then come back stronger and then be able to, perform at an even higher level. So during this time, here we go. This is where we want to actually focus a majority of our time. This allows for additional cycles down the line two things: you're recovering, obviously your body, but also your mind, right? Mentally, it's tough. It's tough to be in that phase where you're being very particular. And well, you're depriving yourselves. And to be honest, nobody wants to be deprived all the time. And it's not a happy place to be, right? This is where we actually build metabolic flexibility, right? Where we have the ability to go into fat loss phases effectively, exit out of them, and then live in a healthy space, right? And so the body can then go ahead and kind of adjust when you go into that, and then adjust when you bring it out, right? The longer you stay here, better results that you get, right? And to be honest, this time you spend, let's say in phase 5, where you're just at maintenance, you are earning the right to go back to a diet phase later, right? So for me, I just make rules for myself that I am only allowed to do one major diet phase per year. I don't try to push any more than that because, one, they're not fun. And I try to be super intentional, right? And then right now, so like now is a really great time to be at maintenance. Why? Because, well, summer's over, right? I'm not vacationing. I'm not in less clothing. I'm in more, right? This is a great time to be sitting at maintenance, allowing recovery, right? And we've got the holidays coming. So we know food is going to be around. We know, right, what's going to come up in the next 8 weeks, right? Which I want to say, this leads me to my last point here, is that I'm actually going to be running a free challenge from Thanksgiving to Christmas, because that's that weird time where I kind of don't know what to do, right? We've got lots of events, we got lots of food around. We know New Year's is coming, right? And so a lot of times we end up just kind of throwing in a towel and saying, well, I'm just gonna eat all the cookies and pies and all that good stuff. So I want to run just a free challenge to help people actually utilize this idea of phasing your nutrition, right? So really what I want to do is focus on, hey, let's get in phase 1 and 2 during that time. Let's use this strategically to restore and optimize. Now, obviously, is that 3 weeks going to be enough time to then push you into a diet, let's say come January? No, but you can certainly set yourself up, right? And start that process rather than like digging a deeper hole. We can start priming your metabolism, learning kind of some of the skills, right? And using this time frame to our advantage rather than this being just kind of an off the rails type of time. So if you're interested, stay tuned. I am going to limit that. So if you're interested, I can put you on the list. I already have a few people who've reached out. I'm kind of giving out hints here and there, but I haven't formally really announced that challenge. It's going to start, like I said, right after Thanksgiving and be in that middle time. So if you want to get on the list, just let me know. And I'll start this whole process basically with you. So that's all I got for nutritional periodization. I hope that was helpful. Again, this is really the foundation of everything I do. It's what I'm passionate about. So I was really excited to kind of share this with you guys. If you guys ever have questions, always available. You can email me. I'm very active on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I am now on Twitter. I got to add that here. So I'm there putting out just little tweets here and there. But yeah, I am always happy to help. And yeah, thank you guys for coming. I'm going to let you guys get to your dinner and your evening. I've been pretty consistent about doing these trainings every other week. So I should see you guys in 2 weeks. All right, guys. Thanks for attending. I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Yay. Of course. Yay, yay. Hope that was helpful, guys. Hey, Janelle. Awesome. I never know who's here till afterwards. All right. I am going to let you guys go. Thanks so much. Till next time.